How about gun safety as a form of national defense? In 1981, a mentally disturbed man, John Hinckley, walked into a pawn shop, bought a gun, and shot and almost killed President Reagan. That tragedy led to a national campaign for background checks before people could buy guns.
Congress recently voted against a proposal to have a 7-day waiting period to buy a gun. Now, folks, I don't want to sound like a Quaker, okay? But, like, is a week a long time to wait to see if Hinckley is qualified to own a gun? Hey, I'm an American. I pay my taxes. I'm in an argument. I want a gun. I want it now. Well, we're sorry, sir, but you're going to have to wait at least a week for the gun. A week? The guy will be gone in a week. Well, that's the point. I mean, a 7-day waiting period to buy a gun, and Congress is against it. Folks, it takes 8 days to get a phone.
And that campaign is still going on today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our 50th. That's right, our 50th show, folks. I'm so psyched to be here today. We got 50 shows under our belt. We really hope you've been appreciating them and listening to them and watching them and maybe sharing them with your friends and relatives and colleagues and people that you think would enjoy them. One of the great things about this show is that we get to talk to people who are doing positive things in the state of Massachusetts, around the country, and sometimes around the world. And today we have a real hero joining us today. I mean, this man, I can't say enough about his efforts on behalf of gun safety, not only in Massachusetts, but around the country. Many of you who live in Massachusetts might remember that big giant billboard that was on the Mass Pike, as right on the other side of Kenmore Square, right across from Fenway Park. As you would come into Boston or come out of Boston, you would see this billboard, and it was the most remarkable public service announcement I've ever seen. It was about 100 yards long, and it was an ongoing tally of how many kids in this country had been shot and killed by gun violence. And it was just a stark daily reminder of the epidemic of gun violence in the country. And this gentleman, John Rosenthal, is the founder of that. It was his brainstorm to put it up there. He owns the property. He put that up there. And I can't think of another public act that had more to do with raising the consciousness in the state of Massachusetts anyway about gun violence in this country and the effect on children, obviously on families, obviously on society. So please welcome to the show the co-founder of Stop Handgun Violence, the one and only Mr. John Rosenthal. Hello, John. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Jimmy. Thanks for having me back.
Well, it's our pleasure. And again, our honor, John. I don't know how you keep going. When did you co-found Stop Handgun Violence?
1994. That is over 1 million dead Americans ago from preventable gun violence.
1994. Okay. And since then, you're saying we've lost 1 million to gun violence?
Over 1 million. It's basically 40 to 45,000 people a year, including over 3,000 kids every single year.
Right.
Thanks for having me back, Jimmy. I started Stop Handgun Violence in 1994. That is roughly over 1 million dead Americans ago from preventable gun violence in the United States.
And you're just a private citizen. What was your motivation to start this?
I bought this billboard next to Fenway Park and realized that roughly 250,000 people drove by this building every day on the Mass Pike. And I was a gun owner. I still am a gun owner. And when I realized that in 1994, 106 Americans died every single day, including 15 kids under 19, I figured most people didn't know that. So I decided to build a 250-foot billboard and put 15 beautiful color photographs of kids killed by guns. And with the headline, "The cost of handguns keeps going up. 15 kids killed every day."
And what was the reaction to it from the public in general?
The reaction was quite amazing. It ended up in the front section of the New York Times. It got a lot of national attention. And it began a dialogue around how is it possible that we could be losing 15 kids every single day to gun violence? And a lot of people who are elected officials would see this billboard. Bill Clinton told me he would change his entourage route when he came to Boston, depending on who he was with in the cars, in order to see this billboard. So we used that billboard as a springboard to propose legislation that could have an impact on reducing injuries and deaths from gun violence without banning most guns.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that had an influence on the elected officials in Massachusetts?
Oh, it absolutely did. And even more importantly, it had an impact on reducing gun violence. Since 1994, when we put up the billboard and changed the conversation, as gun owners and business people who have influence, access, and resources, saying to the world, we can reduce injuries and deaths from firearms without banning all guns. And that was, a real contrast from the historically polarized debate of unlimited access to guns or banning all guns. And since 1994, here in urban Massachusetts, based on 4 gun bills, 3 of which were signed by Republican governors here in the Commonwealth, we have reduced the rate of gun deaths by 40%. And as an urban state, we have the very single lowest gun death rate in the nation. And if every state simply had the same low gun death rate as Massachusetts, as we've done without banning all guns, over half of all the 45,000 annual gun deaths a year would be prevented.
Well, what was the secret to it, John? What made it work in Massachusetts that has not worked around the rest of the country and many other states?
All we did is we took a lesson from how inherently dangerous products like automobiles are regulated. And in Massachusetts, we simply regulate easily concealed handguns and military-style weapons. So we require accountability and responsibility on the part of gun owners to get licensed and lock their guns if they're not, in their control. Gun dealers have to operate out of bona fide stores separate from their car trunks and backpacks. Gun manufacturers have to put safety features on their guns just like they do on automobiles. And law enforcement, has to regulate and enforce our gun laws like they do with automobiles. And that is as simple as it gets. And like with, you can't own a military style tank, you can't own a military style assault weapon designed to outgun cops like a tank would, and designed to carry, more rounds than law enforcement, and designed to kill as many people as possible without having to reload. That is what we do here in Massachusetts, and that is what is needed across this country. And frankly, there's only about 10 to 15 Republicans in Congress holding up what the will of the people in America want, which is they do not want their children killed in schools. They do not want to feel unsafe in public. They also do not want to ban all guns. But we at least have to have a background check for all gun buyers, and we have to ban military-style weapons, and we have to have licensing like we have from automobiles, renewable licensing. So, law enforcement, knows the people in their community. They can license those people if they know that they have a history of being responsible, and they can prevent a license for those in their community who they know have had a history of violence.
Mm-hmm. Well, John, how were you able to get 3 Republican governors to buy into that type of a formula, and why are we so unable to get that type of buy-in from other Republican governors around the country?
Well, the biggest reason I would say is because this effort here in Massachusetts was led by gun owners like me, as well as business people with influence, access, and resources who don't typically get involved in a wedge issue because they're too concerned about their businesses. We changed the conversation as well from the polar extremes to how are kids and criminals and dangerously mentally ill accessing, deadly firearms without detection. And when you put it into sort of that context, it was much easier to support. And again, always saying our goal is not to ban all guns, but it's to make it harder for people that we already deem prohibited from accessing guns. I mean, how do you know if somebody has a history of violence or is a prohibited buyer if you don't have a background check? And why on earth would you give anybody who can breathe access to military-style weapons and easily concealed handguns without a background check, without a license, when we give 13 to 17 rounds to our police officers, in their service weapons to keep us safe, but Congress is giving 35 to 100 round magazines to anyone who can breathe without a background check. In this country, and I have hunted, you need a hunting license everywhere. And when you hunt deer, you're limited. You have to get a license, number one, and you're limited to 5 rounds for shooting deer and 3 rounds for shooting duck in order to protect the deer and duck population. When you want to hunt humans, no license required, no limit on the number of rounds. And when you want to outgun police officers, buy a high-capacity ammunition magazine and a high-powered AR-15, the common denominator in the daily mass shootings, without detection. I mean, our federal gun policy, unlike in Massachusetts, we changed the conversation. We came up with very effective ways to reduce preventable injuries and deaths from firearms. And, we had an honest conversation. And these 3 Republican governors saw the writing on the wall that they wanted their kids to be safe and their communities to be safe. But nationally, you've got a gun lobby who has convinced Congress, threatened Congress, intimidated Congress to give immunity to the gun industry so they can't be sued and have no background check requirement and no limit on the number of rounds and no limit on the firepower. I mean, we have gun violence by design.
So, John, if you were the leader of the national gun safety movement, what would you suggest that we do to take action?
Simply replicate what we've proven to be effective here in Massachusetts by regulating inherently dangerous firearms like we regulate inherently dangerous cars. I mean, we have the lowest gun death rate in the nation, yet 70% of all gun crime that'll happen today and every day in Massachusetts happens with guns purchased out of states without background checks, like Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont.
No background checks in New Hampshire?
Not if you buy guns from private individuals. In 32 states, there is no background check. So if you have some kind of prohibition or a felony conviction, simply drive from Massachusetts to Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont. 32 states do not require background checks from private gun dealers. And the only reason you would go to a federally licensed gun dealer who has to run a background check is because you can pass one. But criminals know. Even Al-Qaeda and Hezbollah have come to the United States and gone to these 32 states and gone to the 5,000 gun shows that happen every year and buy guns without a background check and ship them back to their country.
Mm-hmm. Are the background checks effective?
Well, I mean, they're effective in the states that have them, but not every state has them. 32 states don't have them. And, the system is designed to fail if there's this bifurcated system. If you're a law-abiding citizen and you can pass a background check, you go to a federally licensed gun dealer. If you're, a criminal or prohibited for some reason, or a domestic, you've been convicted of a domestic violence, or you're an international terrorist, simply go to one of the 32 states where a background check isn't required and buy it from a private gun dealer who can operate out of backpacks, car trunks, go to kitchen tables. The other thing about the federal background check system is to become a federally licensed dealer, you pay $250 and you file some paperwork. Now you can have an unlimited number of guns sent to your home, and you can sell them legally out of your home, out of your car trunk, out of your backpack if you do a background check. In Massachusetts, we require gun dealers to operate out of real stores, just like other retailers. We just put reasonable restrictions on a very dangerous, inherently dangerous product that's easily concealed and high-powered. And we've proven that gun laws save lives without banning all guns. Every single state in America that has strong gun laws, like background checks, a ban on military-style weapons, a red flag law, so that a family member could have a gun temporarily removed if their loved one's in crisis and they know they have a firearm. Every single state with reasonable gun laws has lower gun death rates than every single state with lax gun laws.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you, do you think we need federal legislation that covers all 50 states with one set of rules, basically a basic set of rules? And do you think that would be effective in terms of national safety? And how do we get to that place? We got the election 2024 coming up. This is going to be a hot issue. Personally, I can't see how the American public wants more guns in the population. How do you think we achieve something like that?
Well, first of all, I think that if we simply replicated the Massachusetts gun laws, that would be an amazing place to start that would prevent the majority of gun deaths in America without any inconvenience whatsoever to law-abiding gun owners. I mean, it's proven. It's not gun violence prevention isn't theoretical. It's proven. Right.
But in order to do that, do you need like a Joe Biden administration to say we're putting forth legislation, we're gonna replicate the Massachusetts model nationally? And whose minds do you have to change in the Senate, in the Congress? Is that where the real fights are, in those congressional and Senate districts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Senate is largely ready to pass something like that. Reasonable gun laws nationally. I mean, it's like automobiles, those are national laws, and you need national gun laws. Every other country has them. And by the way,
right.
Like in Australia and New Zealand, when they had a mass shooting with an AR-15 and military-style weapons, they banned the guns and bought them back. Every country has dangerously mentally ill people and felons. They don't have gun violence because they don't arm everybody who can breathe, with military-style weapons and easily concealed handguns. I mean, we have gun violence by design, by the uniquely unregulated gun industry. I mean, I'm in the real estate business. I can get sued if I don't shovel a walk. Smith & Wesson, whose AR-15 was used at Parkland, at the Aurora, Colorado movie theater, at the mass shooting in Las Vegas. I mean, Jimmy, if 441 people were shot at a country music festival, 58 killed in minutes, and Congress didn't notice, how many more is it going to take? And I would say that although we live in the safest state in the nation, we cannot sit on our laurels. It's not only and always going to happen to other people's kids and other people's loved ones. And when you can simply drive over the border to Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, or we're connected to Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, where all these guns are coming from, it's just a matter of time. It's less likely to happen here. It's going to happen here. And if it wasn't 441 killed in a music festival, what is it going to be? 1,000 at Fenway Park? It's going to happen because we don't care enough about our children and our loved ones. We don't make this issue a priority. And the gun lobby are single issue voters. So yes, you need a Joe Biden. Yes, you need a democratically controlled Senate. And you need to remove no more than like 5 to 10, 15 maximum spineless Republicans from the U.S. Senate and House of Reps, and we will join the civilized world by making it harder, not easier, for psychopaths and criminals and dangerously mentally ill from accessing guns undetected. And these are guns designed for war, designed to outgun cops, designed to kill as many people as possible. That is what we allow in this country because we don't care enough about getting involved in our politics.
Okay, I care enough, and my listeners care enough, and I know you care enough, John. What should the call to action be moving forward?
I mean, here in Massachusetts, we need to contribute and support Democrats in the swing states.
Okay.
And there's, sadly, only really 5 of them. Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, Ohio, Michigan. I mean,
yeah.
And we need to support young Gen Z candidates. These Gen Z have never known a single day in their life where they couldn't be shot in school, where they couldn't be, worried about climate, where their freedoms are being taken away, where the Republican Party's whole platform is voter suppression, because they know there's more of us than there are of them. So, we need to get more involved in politics, and we have to vote out the spineless Republicans who are indebted, who are, get their blood money campaign contributions from, the unregulated gun industry. And look, I think we can turn this around, but every year that we don't, 45,000 more Americans die from gun violence. Every hour, every 30 minutes, a kid is killed in America. I'm sorry, is shot in America. Every 3 hours, a kid is killed in America. This is, unfortunately, it's preventable, but it's going to take a concerted effort, and people are going to have to become single issue voters on guns, just like the far right is.
Thank you, John. We have our marching orders. Elect Democrats in the swing states, elect them into Congress, elect them into the Senate. That's where the change is going to happen.
Frankly, kids aren't safe in school, just like we're not safe in public places, because a handful of Republicans are holding back the will of millions of Americans who want to regulate guns like we have proven to regulate and save lives here in the Commonwealth.
Got it, John. Thank you so much. I know you've done a lot of work with the folks down in Parkland, David Hogue. I know you and he are very tight, the leaders of March for Our Lives. I know you were very involved with them, and that must be an inspiring experience to work with all these young people who are taking this action, who are victims of this tragedy, and said, we got to do something.
And they have, and they came out, after Parkland. And I talk to David every day. And I love being able to sort of have this multi-generational work together, but also he's come to realize that gun violence prevention isn't theoretical, and Massachusetts is the model, and he's pushing that model all the time. I would say that people said Gen Z wouldn't come out. They weren't even old enough to vote after Parkland. They registered about 75,000 people had helped flip the House. They said they wouldn't come out in 2020. They came out and won the White House only by 42,000 votes, even though Biden got 7.1 million more than Trump. And guess what? They said they weren't going to come out in 22, and they came out in record numbers and helped stop the red wave bloodbath that everyone was predicting in the midterms. They are 20% of the electorate now. They're going to be 40% in 2028. They are the future. We just have to keep them alive long enough. And God forbid we don't, because our democracy will be lost. The future is being lost every day as a result of gun violence. And we've got to do better.
John Rosenthal, thank you so much for joining us today. You're a true American hero. We want to build a safer, more equitable, and saner society, and it starts with us taking action.
You know, people, if they want to help, should contact us at stophandgunviolence.org. We work very closely with March for Our Lives. We should be supporting these young folks who we've really let down. And I would also suggest, calling, here in Massachusetts, where you are more likely to live here. You are more likely to not be shot here. Let Maura Healey, Governor Healey know. Let Speaker Mariano know. Let the Senate President know that you appreciate their leadership because they have shown courage, unlike members of Congress.
Right. Will do, John. We got our marching orders. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for having me
Great
back.
to see you again, John.
Great to see you, Jimmy.
50 episodes under our belt, and we're marching forward, ladies and gentlemen. Progress, peace, prosperity.
Keep smiling, buddy.
I will. Thank you, John.
Thanks for
Great
having
job.
me. Thank you.